Welcome back, honors. Oh man, here's the ultimate irony: as y'all are looking at me, you're like, "Oh, he's tired. He must have just had our class or whatever." Actually, I didn't. I'm kind of like believing that we'll be at about this point today, which is kind of aggressive sometimes. So if I end up leaving a hole out, if I end up not having enough space or whatever, if we didn't finish the Phoenicians, I need you to leave a little bit of space underneath them, all right? So that way I'll actually be able to kind of like meld those two things together, okay? Now, anyway, getting after it, though, we started talking today about the kingdoms of the Near East, the small kingdoms of the East, as well as getting into our mighty empires of the East, kind of going in then soon to our first test, because we had to talk about these guys, the Hebrews, and then we got to talk about the Assyrians, and then we got to talk about the Persians, and once we're done with them, we have our first test. Big deal. It's a very big deal, actually. We are ahead of schedule right now, which is huge. Very excited about that. But let's keep going. Let's keep getting after it, all right? So, anyway, but children of Israel, right? So, some of you are talking about, it's like, I know all the stuff there is about Jewish people. I've been to a bar mitzvah. Well, a big thing that you don't understand is that they have a very, very, very ancient past, right? So the children of Israel are considered one of the most ancient civilizations and organizations of people that has ever existed throughout history, right? So, and a lot of it's due to the fact that one mighty empire fell. So the Hittites, the same guys that came in and smacked the Egyptians really hard, right? Taught them ironworking, taught them a lot of documentative processes. They're going to fall, though, due to weak leadership, which typically happens of any great empire, right? Usually it's the leaders, the following leaders of your great leader just aren't that quite as good as the first one was. But the Hittites are going to fall due to weak leadership, and the problem is now is Egypt. Egypt's out, right? Egypt's out because the Hittites took care of them already and took them out. And the Egyptians are going to be kind of in this fledgling state of this third intermediate until the Greeks come in and take them over much later. This is going to give way, though, for a ton of small little states to be established, right? Now, those include the Assyrians. They also mainly, though, include the big guys south of the Phoenicians, the Hebrews. Some of you are like, I thought the Phoenicians didn't really settle anywhere. All right, look, y'all are just getting nitpicky. They had small settlements around, but they were not like a large-based civilization, right? But the Hebrews were, okay? So, weak. I don't even like that slide. We're going straight to my major monotheism slides so we can talk about how the big difference between these guys and the rest of the world is simply that they're monotheistic, right? So to give you a heads up, we believe that the area of Canaan is actually in modern-day Israel. We believe, jot that down somewhere, we believe the Hebrews were settled originally in the modern Israel area anyway, right? Which actually gives you a lot of better understanding of the entire Zionist movement. If you don't know what this means, I feel like you should, though. So jot that down really quick. Zionism, Z-I-O-N-I-S-M. Zionism was a political trend that actually followed World War II, or actually began after World War I, going into the World War II conflict, talking about how the Jewish people deserved a representative state of their own due to the courses of history and the fact that the Jewish communities were moved and dislocated so many times, right? But that was called Zionism, right? So that's actually something I talk about with my AP kids. But the big difference between the nation of the Jews and the Hebrews at the time is they were the first successful monotheistic religion. Again, I hear you. I hear you back there, Carly Janko. You're like, but I thought you said that Akhenaten and Nefertiti tried to make Egypt monotheistic, but it was unsuccessful, right? The cult of Aten actually fell and eventually even was besmirched by their own son, right? So, but the Hebrews were monotheistic from the start. And a monotheistic religious system is a religion that believes in one God, right? One God. Now, getting after it, though. Which religions are monotheistic today? That's a great question. Really quick, though, you also need to put the opposite of monotheistic is polytheistic, right? You need to know those two words. They're crazy, crazy important. So polytheism is a multi-god or deity situational religion, right? So, but really quick, which religions today are monotheistic? The big ones, anyway. There's the big three. They're called the big three Abrahamic faiths, right? There is, of course, the nation of Judaism. There is Christianity. And then there is the nation of Islam, right? Islam. But getting after it, though. There are three main religions that we will discuss, or no, there's not. I'm moving on. You don't need to know what your religion is. All right, anyway, let's keep getting into Judaism, though, all right? AKA, also known as the Jews, or the Hebrews, right? So Judaism is a multifaceted, monotheistic religious system that believes, particularly for the ancient time period that they grew out of during the early thousands BC, they believe in a God that was three things, right? Three things. And some of y'all are going to think these hand signals are goofy, but they make complete sense. Shout out Laura McInerney for actually teaching me these for freshman year to remember these for a test when she took the same course, right? There are three characteristics to the Hebrew God, right? There is omniscient, which is all-knowing, and we always go like this, right? Omniscient, all-knowing. Then there is omnipresent, which means he exists everywhere, right? So it's omniscient, omnipresent, and then there is omnipotent, right? Omnipotent means all-powerful. So you have an all-knowing, all-everything, all-powerful God, right? So the Hebrews believe that all events in history and their faith are actually interconnected, right? A lot of people always like to look back at, like, let's say, the Holocaust, for example, and they're like, why didn't the Jewish people just recount their faith or say they were Christian? A lot of it is because a lot of the Jews believe that that was a test of their faith, right? They believe that the Jewish doctrine believes that history and faith are an interconnected thing, that each event reflects God's plan for the Jewish nation itself, right? So this is just a fun little, like, cartoon. Get it? Omnipresent, Matt. You are here. Why he doesn't have any pants on, I don't know. Now, anyway, but let's keep getting after it. So Judaism, right? Due to their views, they began to record laws and events in the Hebrew Bible called the Tanakh, right? The Tanakh. Now, the thing about it is some of you are like, I thought that the Torah was their holy book. That's only one small part of that. Well, it's actually a big part. It is one part of their collective text, right? Now, the Torah is the one you hear about the most often because it's the most used in day-to-day life and day-to-day practices, right? However, that is just one part of the Hebrew Bible known as the Book of Moses. The Torah basically kind of dictates a lot of little things. Diet is dictated in the Torah as well. The Hebrews, since ancient times, have actually believed in the concepts of keeping things what it's called kosher, right? They do not eat pork. It's a very regimented diet. They do not eat pork. They do not mix meat and cheese. There's several other ones that I just don't know off the top of my head. Now, anyway, but also, the reason why we always say the holy book is due to the fact that their book itself is actually not a book. It's a scroll, right? So, now, if we're talking about the book itself, we've got to talk about, like, the books that it includes. But the Jewish Tanakh actually contains 24 books total in 3 separate parts or testaments, the Torah being one of them, right? So the Torah also, though, includes the first 5 books of the Old Testament, right? So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, there are 2 major events in the Jewish faith that interconnects them to the ancient people that we're talking about. Those, of course, being Exodus and Passover, right? So Exodus and Passover have their roots deeply entrenched into the Jewish faith and the nation of the Hebrews, right? Exodus, of course, being the story of them leaving Egypt, right, in mass numbers. However, we're not sure if it happened the exact way that we're thinking. There's a chance, though, that they were just under Egyptian imperialism. Maybe it was the reverse, right? Maybe the Egyptians left them, not the other way around, right? So, and then you also have, of course, Passover, that being the story of Moses saying that the Holy Spirit will pass over your home and not kill your firstborn son, but instead kill the firstborn son of the Egyptians, their enslavers. And again, really quick, who do we think that there's a chance that the Exodus might have also, that story might have been an odd connection to? Good job, Ryan Davis, the Hyksos, right? Very, very solid. I like it. Now, well, let's keep getting after it, shall we? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Now, getting back into the ancient Hebrew people, we don't have a lot of huge settlements of theirs left behind. We have minimal architectural data due to the amount of hostilities that have gone over in that area. The modern-day nation of Israel has seen a lot of wars, a lot of violence, and a lot of, I guess chaos is an aggressive word, but a lot of different political movements, okay? So, for example, at one point it was actually referred to as British Palestine, right, when the British had actually imperialized that area. Now, the oldest known text deepening its roots into the ancient people of the Hebrews, we believe was written 2,000 years ago. They're called the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? So they were discovered in 1947 by a kid walking his goats, all right? So there are 2 famous stories about it. two separate stories. No one really knows which one's true. Someone's probably going to Google this right now. I'm feeling like Alicia's probably like thinking she might do a little extra research on this, but I like that vibe. It's good stuff. I've heard two separate stories about this. I've heard that a young man was herding his goats and was throwing rocks into a cave, idly just hanging out, doing his thing, like a 14-year-old boy herding goats. And when he threw a rock, he heard a crash, and a clay pot had actually broken. And he walked in there and then discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've also heard the same story about the same 14-year-old boy herding goats, and he walks over a soft spot in the earth and crash, it goes down. He discovers the said Dead Sea Scrolls in a hidden cavern underground. So one of the coolest things about the Dead Sea Scrolls, though, is the fact that it does give us their roots in 2,000 years ago, in the shift of the BC era. It's the oldest known text that we have. They were written on papyrus, which is a really cool fact, because that means that they had some type of intercommunicative activities with the Egyptians, because the Egyptians actually made the papyrus that it's written on. Bound in leather and encased in clay pots. They were actually found in a cave outside of the city called Qumran, right? One of the coolest things about this as well, I don't know if I have it written in here. No, I don't. All right, cool. So this is the cave that it was found in, right? That's the actual cave that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found inside of. One of the neatest things about it is that there was a treasure map inside of the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. It was a silver plate that actually had inscribed on it the locations of a lot of different money holdings that were actually hidden at the time. And we've gone back as a historical community and tried to find all of them, but they were all gone. They'd all been excavated already. We believe that there's a chance that maybe the Romans actually had something to do with that, because the Romans had a history of just like going in and taking everything they wanted. So getting back after it, though, continuing forward, Judaism, of course, who is the father of the Jewish people? You don't need to write the question, you just need to know the answer. Anybody? Anybody? I hear somebody. Who's shouting that in the background? I like it. Yep. 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 That's Hobbes, right? Very good job, Hobbes. Abraham, right? Abraham. Abraham is considered the father of not only the Jewish faith, but the Christian faith, and as well as the Islamic faith, right? Yeah. Just to give you a heads up. Abraham is connected to all three of those faiths, right? There are a lot of people that advocate for the fact that we are all praying towards the same entity, right? There are some people that disagree with that, but to each their own, right? So now, he and his family, though, lived in the area of Canaan, which is present-day Palestine/Israel, right? So present-day Palestine/Israel, the region of Palestine, or the country of Israel, known as Canaan, pronounced K-Nun, right? Now, after passing God's test, which I don't know if you know the story of the test itself, he was told that he needs to sacrifice his firstborn son, right? Now, he had two sons at the time. The big division between the people of the faith of Judaism and the people of the faith of Islam, they disagree on who the son was that was asked to be sacrificed. He had Isaac and Ishmael. Now, according to the Jews, the sacrifice was to be of Isaac, and according to the Islamic faith, the sacrifice was to be that of Ishmael, right? So, now, because Abraham actually had two different mothers of his children. He had his wife, I think it's, I don't remember what they're, get to me first tomorrow. Get to me first tomorrow. And it can't be, so Emily and Hobbs have already gotten the get here as fast as you can extra credit, right? Tell me the women that fathered Abraham's children. Both their names. All right, both their names. Get here first. Emily and Hobbs, you were out of this game, though. You already have some extra credit. Don't be greedy. All right, so now, anyway. But after passing God's test, he was given the image of a ram to try and tell him to stop from sacrificing his child, and that he created a binding covenant or an agreement with God, right? So now, the covenant itself is very important, but we will talk about the rest of this stuff tomorrow. But God's covenant with the Israelites actually embodies a lot of their early faith practices, because the covenant is a promise, right? A covenant is a promise, and the covenant between God and the Hebrews was supposedly that a special relationship between God and the Israelites, that they were considered the chosen people, and then also that they had the promised land in Canaan, which is of modern-day Israel, right? So, as you can tell, the ancient Hebrews, their religion is almost their history, right? Their culture is their religion. Their faith is everything basic, like one of the best documents we have of their existence during the era of post-Egypt, Phoenicia, and going into the Assyrians coming up soon, right? So I like to talk about their faith base a lot more than anything else, due to the fact that, like, you can't just let the Hebrews be a blip on the radar and then move on, because a lot of people walking around don't even know that the faith of Judaism is much younger than Christianity, or much older than Christianity. So, but yes, so we're going to stop there for today. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about a bunch of other cool stuff, like the brother law, their dietary restrictions and commandments, a lot of little things like that. But I wanted to cut it here because I didn't want to, like, go too far forward. There's a lot of information today. So I hope you all have a good evening, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, Honors.